All right, hello. Yeah, all right, let's do it. All right, good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us for this team project presentation. So this is actually going to be the International Space University Southern Hemisphere Space Studies Program final team project presentation. This will be actually a culmination of weeks and weeks of work with different people, different backgrounds, different disciplines, coming together for the first time to produce an amazing report that you will be having an overview of today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Gunner people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people in this team here today. So we're going to start, actually, the plan for today. We're going to have two team project presentations. The first one is going to be a day without space. And it's going to be about an hour, including questions and answer. And then we'll take about 30 minutes break. And then after that, we'll start with the second team, which is Space 2030. And we'll also do an hour for that one. And on the conclusion of this, we'll convene with the assessors. We'll go through the comments while you guys are doing a feedback session. And we'll come later in the afternoon and give you all the feedback from the assessors and everything that went through. So to start with the first one, I would like to introduce the team, A Day Without Space. As you know, space has become an integral part of our lives, for the economies, of every single thing we do. And we don't think, we got used to living with all these assets, everything that we have in space. But what if that space wasn't available? What are the impacts? What are the social economic aspects that's going to be impacted by these kind of things? So all that stuff actually needs to be addressed. And I think what I've seen so far, you guys have done a very comprehensive report, and we're looking forward to having you guys present it. So with that, we'll start the first team project then. Sunny?
The world you thought you lived in has changed. By the end of this talk, you'll know that we live in a different place. Somewhere brighter, somewhere faster, somewhere new. We owe this rapid rate of change to space. Not to the vast expanse or emptiness over us, but the satellites that we've sent to patrol it. The satellites that enable our daily lives. It is upon their backs that our new world has been built. They inform us and they protect us. They help us look not just to the stars, but they turn their lens back on ourselves. And we can see. But we're in danger. We're in danger from that giant glowing ball that lights our days, and we're in danger from ourselves. These silent sentinels that search our skies are just one catastrophe away from leaving us in a world without space.
And you're watching. It appears that all satellite communication have been lost since last night. At the moment, we are still unsure of what is happening and which is the extent of the impact on in the world. But it seems like it might be a global event.
Well, earlier today, our journalists were sent into the streets so that they can see how is this outage affecting our community. Let's take a look.
据机场消息，由于不明原因，这个航班将大面积延误，我们将现场采访一些路人。你好，你好，机场将大面积延误， 请问你有什么？
我现在很着急啊！我这刚从中国到这边，现在马上赶着要转机去阿德莱德，要参加那个 ISU 的 SHSSP 的英语课。但是现在这个今天的航班已经取消了，我不知道今天还能不能飞啊，所以很着急啊！明天就要上课了。
好，后续我们将继续跟踪报道。
So we're out here having a chat with some of the local people to see if they've been affected by the satellite outage. We might see if we can talk to this gentleman. Excuse me, sir, we noticed in there that you were having some problem paying for some of your products. Could you explain a bit more?
Actually, I'm very upset. The cards are not working. I went to the ATM also. I went to get some cash. It's all declined. I don't know. I called the bank also. They are saying there is a problem with the satellites. I don't know what to do. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for talking with us. Well, we'll have to hang around here and keep investigating what might have happened. Back to you guys in the studio.
Welcome back.
Here today with us we have two experts. Professor Aaron Happian, expert in space debris from the University of Queensland, and Dr. Wu Clan Gang, expert in extreme space weather. They are here to help us understand the causes of these outages.
Professor Erin and Dr. Wu, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
So my first question is, do we have any idea on what might have happened?
No, we don't know yet. But according to our research, the most two threatening factors for spacecraft is solar super strong radiation. Well known are solar storms and space debris. Now we are analyzing the reasons for space outage from two aspects.
Very interesting. But how do these solar storms affect our satellites?
The solar storm is a short-lived, large-scale energy release occurring in the solar atmosphere. Solar storms include two types. One is solar flares, and the other is coronal mass ejections. They sometimes appear alone and sometimes together. In this case, it's more likely that solar flares have been accompanied by a coronal mass ejections. These are very dangerous. They are huge eruptions of energy and magnetic field that can be even bigger than the sun. They destroy satellites because they trigger magnetic storms in Earth's magnetosphere. This means the satellite electronics are damaged from high electric charge or from high energy particles.
Thank you for explaining that. My next question would be for you, Professor Erin. I understand you are an expert in space debris. For our viewers at home, could you explain what space debris is and how it might affect satellites?
Sure, David. So space debris is just all the junk that's orbiting around the Earth at the moment. It's kind of like the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, only artificial. There are millions and millions of objects in orbit right now, and even tiny bits smaller than 1 centimetre big is dangerous because of how fast they're travelling. With so much stuff up there, the likelihood of collisions is really high. What could have happened here is a chain reaction of collisions where some debris has run into a satellite, created more debris, which has run into more satellites, and so on, until we lose connection with space. We call this the Kessler syndrome. If this is what's actually happened, it could stop us from launching rockets altogether.
Thank you for the clarification. We hope that we can get to the bottom of this quickly. In the meantime, we just received some footage from the National Space Agency. Let's have a look.
I'd like to thank you all for coming out today. We have the understanding that there has been some speculation about what might have happened, and we would like to begin by saying there's no immediate danger. Our understanding is that there has been some malfunction that has affected all satellites. We are unsure at this stage what this may have been caused by, though we have two leading ideas. Yes, you and me.
What about the astronauts? What's going to happen to them?
We have been unable to establish contact to the astronauts with our own communication systems. Now we are waiting to hear from our colleagues in Russia and China, who have direct links with the International Space Station. Yes.
What if they can't establish a connection?
Okay, I've just been informed that we have unfortunately been unable to establish any contact with ISS. The next step of our protocol would be to look with optical telescopes to attain any visual information of the status of the ISS. I'd like to express, though, that the crew on board the ISS is well trained and they have clear instructions in place to deal with situations like this. Thank you.
Well, it seems that all of it remains very unclear, and we are sorry not to be able to inform you better. Let's hope tomorrow will bring some new answers. From all of us here at 799 News, thanks for watching.
Until next time.
At Grapefruit, our dream has always been to look further, beyond the challenges, to listen through the noise. Our world has grown smaller. We need to focus. We need to reach out to each other. In an increasingly intricate world, our response has not been to design something more complex, but to start again, to create life from the most basic level. Our new creation has been shaped by this ideal. The eye string is the best thing we've made at Grapefruit. The intuitive design makes it not only easy to use, but a natural extension of our hands, our minds, and our souls. The distance between people separates us all. The eye string doesn't just place your loved one next door, we bring them into the same room. Don't just communicate, connect.
Good evening, Adelaide. I'm Lulu Lime.
And I'm David Davidson.
And you're watching 799 News.
It has now been a week since we lost contact with all satellites. In the past few days, our society has been greatly impacted in many ways.
Bal Nebula was sent into the fields again. Let's take a look at what he found.
So I'm here today with Michael, who is the CEO of a local IT business. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Michael, could you give us a bit of an overview about why we're seeing this loss of internet?
Well, what's happening is we've lost our satellite connectivity. So basically, data is no longer going via satellite. It's having to go via the undersea cable, which means it takes longer to get from point A to point B. So people will be seeing their internet services slow down, and in rural and regional areas, they may be losing internet connectivity entirely.
Sure. So we've actually started to see some of the impacts this is having on an individual basis, on an everyday basis. What do you see as being some of the challenges moving forwards for society as a whole?
Well, some of the challenges I foresee is basically Australia today is a bit of a cashless society, so people don't carry a lot of cash on them. So basically they're not going to be able to access bank services, so they're not going to be able to access money, and therefore they're not going to be able to buy the essentials like food, water, that kind of thing.
Sure, so that's actually really quite a big change. And presumably that's also going to have an impact on the company that they normally buy those services and products from. Is that true?
That's correct. I'm seeing this myself as a business owner. I use the internet to receive a lot of payments and make a lot of payments, and not being able to do that as easily has made things a lot more difficult.
Yeah, sure. Well, we'll be very intent in following up how this might be affecting businesses such as your own. And again, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Back to you guys in the studio.
Well, that explains a lot of the difficulties we've been experiencing here in the studio.
Yes, indeed. Here today with us is Dr. Mohammed. Dr. Mohammed is an expert on positioning, navigation, and timing, and who will help us understand more about the situation. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, David.
Dr. Mohammed, thank you for joining us today. Could you please brief us on what are positioning, navigation, and timing systems?
Basically, positioning, navigation, and timing system is provided through a constellation of satellites that's orbiting the Earth around 20,000 kilometer altitude. A well-known system is at the United States GPS. So this satellite constellation, alongside with the network of ground stations, both of them have a highly precise atomic clocks, synchronized atomic clock. It's actually help us to navigate through to a target or track an object. Also provide us with a universal and local precise timing.
I see. So how does that impact people's lives?
Well, we're using BNT services in our daily life, and very important things, starting from the public, normal people, to a large industry. So in the transportation, people actually are using the phone to navigate to the places. So now, without this, people actually having a hard time driving their cars. Also, the public transportation affected really badly. The trains, the buses are way off schedule. There is a lot of cancellation. People are frustrated. The emergency response, the justice enforcement, it's very late. Also, there is another side that's for the timing services. The banking using what's they called electronic timestamp for the ATM and credit card transaction. So all of that stops because there is no BNT services, as well as the production, energy production, power production. It's really badly affected because they're using timing to produce power. So there were like a lot of blackouts around the world. Yeah, that's it.
I don't like the sound of that. I don't want to end up lost in the woods because I can't use my GPS. What do you think we can do about that?
Well, there is an alternative ground-based system. It's called long-range navigation. Although it's not as precise as the GNSS constellation, but it provides a good solution for the meantime. And some of the countries actually have that as a backup plan. And so we are recommending those countries to share the technology with other countries that doesn't have, to minimize the impact of losing satellites.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Let's hope that works.
Thank you.
And now, to cover a different aspect of what has been impacted so far, it is my pleasure to welcome two new experts in telecommunication, this time, Dr. Jasmine and Dr. William. Thank you for joining us.
Dr. Jasmine and Dr. William, thank you for joining us today. Could you please explain to me what is communication satellites used for?
Thank you, Lulu. Satellite communication normally used to provide television, radio, telephone, and also internet access services, though they also have many other applications. The satellite itself in the system is responsible to rely and amplify the telecommunication signals. And their position in the sky means they can provide a large coverage on the Earth. So it is very important in our daily life.
Sure. Since the outage happened a week ago, what has been the impact on our day-to-day lives?
We have some people who are living in remote area, which means that they had lost their mobile phones and their radio and television and also internet access. So they are all cut out of the civilizations. And also we have many long-distance traveling flights that are used to use the satellite communication to manage the traffic the air traffic control. And also now the internet is more congested because there is more user and less bandwidth that we have. It's no more available because the government tried to organize correctly the services, the network services, and they limited the public access. So which means that we have some less people that don't have access now to the social medias. And also we have the energy in the food chain, which is being affected because we are no more capable to monitor it, and also we'll probably have a blackout for cities because we lost the synchronization of the energy feeding.
So this is why I can't call my mom.
Yes.
What do you think we should do next?
I think the government shall improve their ground segment resources, which will compensate for the loss of the satellite which are in the outer space, and assist the recovery of the energy and the food chains. And also we shall focus our design and our tests on some small design very quickly. So probably will be without trying to do at first satellite, but start from the bottom of the wheel, which is probably stratospheric balloon or drones.
And also, I think we should understand what's the reason why we lose the access to the space and what happened. And then the commercial satellite operators can find their directions. So we suggest working together. And if we can prepare for the launch of the replacement satellite as soon as possible, and otherwise, government must find their alternative. Thank you.
Thank you for explaining that to us. Well, now out in the field again is Bal Nebula, catching more of the effects of this catastrophe.
It's only been a week since the satellite outage, and we're only just starting to get to grips with what this means for us. Some people, however, are being affected more strongly than others. I'm here today with Kyle, who is the owner of a local business. Thanks very much for joining me, Kyle. Could you give us a bit of an idea about what it is that your business does?
Well, my business supplies this area with food created by local farmers, mainly fruit and dairy.
Sure. And how is it that the satellite outage has started to affect your business?
Well, because of the problems with the internet, it's certainly affected our online orders, but the largest problem for us has been we can't keep track of the delivery and supply because the GPS in the trucks no longer work.
Sure. Well, this seems like this might be a real big problem moving forward, especially for a lot of small businesses, and worst of all, it seems like some of us might actually have to learn how to use a map. Thanks again for joining us, Kyle. Back to you guys in the studio.
Welcome back.
It appears it's very clear now that the whole world is affected by this outage. We have a clip from our colleagues in China who are experiencing similar issues. Let's take a look.
目前卫星失效已经有1周时间了。现在我们请有关专家谈一谈对卫星失效后对我们生活的一些影响。您好，我是电视台记者，请您谈一谈对卫星失效后对人们生活的一些影响。
卫星失效目前已经有1周时间，已经给人们的生活造成了很大的影响。短期来看，导航卫星的失效会使手机定位功能缺失，通信卫星的失效会造成远洋航海信息的互通能力的降低。长远来看，遥感卫星的失效会造成影响天气预报、气象观测、应急救灾等方面的工作。造成卫星失效的原因目前尚不清楚。目前各国正在组织专家抓紧研究分析。
通过采访，我们了解到，目前有关部门正在组织有关专家抓紧分析卫星失效的原因，后续根据原因分析的结果制定相关措施。谢谢。目前呢，卫星已经失效1周了。我们来到街上采访一下普通民众，看看大众对卫星失效后，对我们生活有什么影响。你好，我是电视台记者，请您谈谈卫星失效后对我们生活。 活有什么影响？
最近呢，一些经常看的电视和广播节目呢，看不到也收听不到，然后手机呢也看不到那个天气预报。去吃饭时呢，也没法用那个支付宝来结账，用手机呢去打车呢，老是打不到，然后软件显示搜索不到可用的出租车。孩子的晚上的那个在线视频英语课呢，也没法上了。那个培训公司呢说，所有的国外英语老师都联系不上了，上网的网速非常慢，感觉回到了拨号上网的时代，对生活和学习的影响很大，一切都很不方便。
通过采访呢，我们了解到，民众对卫星失效的反应还是比较强烈的。希望我们有关部门呢抓紧时间，分析原因，制定解决措施，使卫星尽快恢复正常。好，谢谢。
大家好，现在是在悉尼国际机场。据可靠消息，机场的大面积飞机延误是由于这个卫星失效。我们将采访路人跟踪报道。怎么又是你？怎么又是你？
我现在这个已经在这儿了1周了，困在这里1周了。前面英语课已经取消了，我现在还想赶着会去上 SHSSP 的课，但是我不知道哪天才能去。明天就开学了，我现在还在这里，还是到不了阿德莱德，所以我现在很着急啊。
后续我们将继续跟踪报道。
Well, we hope that this issue is resolved as soon as possible for the sake of this world.
From all of us here at 799 News, thanks for watching.
Until next time.
Do you find yourself getting lost too often? Do you find it annoying when the old GPS system stops working on your phone? Do you find that you just can't find yourself at all? Well, search no longer with the brand new GPS, the giant paper sheet. With only 300 pages, this bad boy just takes 5 hours to assemble. Order in the next 15 minutes and you can receive 2 giant paper sheets for the price of 1.
2 giant paper sheets for the price of 1 if I order in the next 15 minutes?
With an inbuilt guidance system and updates on traffic, you'll never get lost again. The new GPS. Buy now while stocks last.
Good evening, Adelaide. I'm Lola Lime.
And I'm David Davidson.
And you're watching 799 News. It has been a rough month since we have heard last of our beloved satellites.
Yes, it has. And today we are joined by the world-famous Professor Raj. Professor Raj is an expert in remote sensing who will hopefully shed some more light on the situation. Welcome.
Professor Raj, thank you for joining us today. It's such an honor. Could you please explain to us what is Earth remote sensing and why do we need it?
So Earth remote sensing, obtaining the information from the objects or the places from the Earth using the satellite sensors in the polar orbiting satellite orbits as well as the Earth observation geosynchronous orbits. So ranging from a few hundred kilometers to 1,000 kilometers. So mainly we used to get the information about the natural resources, weather observations in the land as well as the ocean, and we used to manage the disasters using the satellite data, the observation satellites. So hugely we are depending upon the satellites. So currently we have the 684 Earth observation satellites in the world operational, so those things are not available now. So based on these observations since 60 years, we got a lot of information how to protect the Earth. So satellites, Earth observation satellites influence everybody's daily life, and it impacts the global economy as well as the employment.
That's very interesting. Could you develop a bit more about what's happening currently?
So currently, per day, we are missing the millions of observations from the oceans and from the land, of especially weather observations. And we don't have any information about the natural resources, what is the availability. And if you see the last week, 3 hurricanes, Category 3 and Category 4 hurricanes hit the east coast of the US, and we are unable to predict more than 24 hours. So it causes the $1 billion loss in the economy, and it causes so many lives. So all insurance companies are in big trouble in the globe, and in the South China Sea as well as the West Pacific and Indian Ocean, we don't have any observations. Mariners are facing a lot of difficulties, and we are unable to predict the cyclones and typhoons. And in Australia, Northern Australia, we are unable to look where the wildfires are happening and the volcanic eruptions happening in the world, we are unable to see. So there is a big loss for an observation group.
Thank you so much, Professor Wright.
Thank you.
You sure have clarified many things for us here. Now, last night, the United Nations, they held a very special assembly, and we managed to get our hands on the footage. Let's have a look.
My esteemed colleagues, the world relies on Australian exports. Our food and mining industries are in crisis. With a heavy reliance on the PNT systems that are now non-functional, the efficiencies of these industries has been crippled. My fellow representatives, the Australian government strongly recommends prioritisation of the restoration of the PNT systems as a matter of urgency. Furthermore, the Australian government recommends that we take a global approach to this solution, creating replacement assets with a shared contribution from all nations represented here and no singular ownership. Thank you.
失去太空中的航天气候，我们国家的政府功能和部分失效，普通民众的日常生活也受到了很大的影响。例如，我们的太空探索活动接近于停滞，灾害预警和管理、通讯广播、导航授时、天气预报等无法提供实时的服务。我们打算通过发射新的卫星、高空飞艇和无人机解决部分问题，但我们没法解决所有的问题。航天是全人类的事业，大家面临同样的问题。我们希望通过全球的共同努力来解决我们所面对的困难。谢谢。
دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة تأثرت سلبا من الناحية الاقتصادية والاجتماعية بعد مرور شهر على توقف الأقمار الصناعية عن العمل وإلغاء جميع المشاريع المتعلقة بالوصول إلى الفضاء واكتشافه، حيث أنها اتجهت في السنوات الأخيرة إلى إعداد وتنمية الكوادر الوطنية في مجال الفضاء. وتؤكد دولة الإمارات على مساهمتها ودعمها بالمشاركة مع الأمم الأخرى إلى إيجاد حل بديل.
Well, we sure hope that the leaders of all nations get together to find some clarity in this chaos.
Yes, indeed. And on the subject of hot air, I hear now that we might have some weather update from our favorite weatherman, Keith Wags.
Thanks, David. It's Keith here as usual, filmed on location here at UniSA with the weather. Unfortunately, we don't have too much to report, as you can see. Everything's down at the moment, but I guess if I took my own crack at it, I could probably say that it's pretty cold today, actually. I've got a jacket on. I mean, the skies are pretty clear. Actually, if we just follow the camera around this side, maybe over here, there's a few clouds, and it's a little windy. That's about it. I don't have too much more to report. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Keith, for exposing the location of the studio that act. And that is all for today. We will leave you with some extra footage.
From all of us here at 799 News, thanks for watching.
Until next time.
你好，现在是在悉尼国际机场。至今已经失效1个月了，我很高兴采访到1个月前采访的听众。
你也知道，我在这儿已经待了1个月了，现在课程也结束了，我也不用去上课了，我现在就想回家过春节。但是我不知道我什么时候才能走啊，根本就飞不了。
后续我们将继续跟踪报道。
It's a new universe, and we need a new knowledge. The universe has spoken to us directly by by taking out our satellites, it is said, we don't want you here. And so we need to draw in and search for the light. And I have found the light. I have seen the light. It's a dark light. So we have a new religion, the Church of the Dark Light. And if you join us with a small contribution of half of what you own, you can also see the dark light. I will give you these glasses. And together we will see what the universe is telling us directly. Bitcoin is the second.
Good evening, Adelaide. I'm Lulu Lime.
And I'm David Davidson.
And you're watching 799 News. It has been a long year since we have lost connection with our satellites. Our lives have surely been deeply affected. And today we have a chance to welcome an expert in economics, Joaquin, who might be able to give us some new answers. Thank you for joining us today, Joaquin.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Could you please tell us what economic impact space exploration has?
Yes, today satellite industry has a great impact on global and local economies, more than what we normally think. Just for example, only $1 spent on the NASA's project will generate about between $7 and $14 for the spin-off technologies. That is to say, in 2019, the NASA's budget is about $20 billion. That this will generate $280 billion in the future. Revenue globally. And these spin-off technologies include some life-changing machines such as CT scanner and breast cancer screening.
Fascinating. What happens from an economic point of view if we were to lose the internet?
Yes, as you know, internet is very important for everyone today, all over the world. Even for countries with lower connection, up to 95% of the business are online. If we lose the internet even for one day, this will be a huge impact. Just think of how much online shopping happens now. And for a country like US with a higher connection, it will cost about $23 million every day for every 10 million population.
Can you please tell us how much will we potentially lose if businesses cannot use remote sensing for the Internet of Things?
Yes, without remote sensing, we will lose access to the data found in precision agriculture, smart mining, and connected logistics. The greatest barrier today for the Internet of Things is the cost to build, to deploy, and connect a network, especially for the rural and remote areas. According to our recent research, by 2027, the global revenue based on satellite-based data will reach roughly $3 billion.
Well, we sure hope that we will not be affected too much here at 799, as we would like to keep bringing you the news.
Thank you.
And along the same line, Bal managed to meet with some people who have not lost hope completely and are trying to recover some critical aspects. Let's take a look at what we got.
We're here on a windy day at Mount Barker to play with some balloons. Now, these may not be as exciting as balloon animals, but they're nevertheless very important. We're joined, very fortunately, by Kevin, who's the local expert in balloon technology. Thanks very much for coming today, Kevin.
Yeah, welcome. Glad to be here with you.
Fantastic. So, Kevin, could you tell our listeners a bit about what's happening today?
Today we are going to send a balloon into the sky, which is roughly about 35 kilometers high.
Fantastic. And what's the reason behind doing this?
Actually, it's part of my research program. We think the balloon is the best way to replace the satellite. We have equipped many devices with the balloon, and it can help us to do the weather forecast, observing the city, the internet access, and the navigation, and so on.
Fantastic. Well, what you're doing is really inspiring, and I'm sure everyone back home will be very interested to hear about it, and we'll be following the progress of the balloon very keenly, and fingers crossed it doesn't pop on the way up. Thanks very much, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Back.
Thank you again, Bal, for all of your hard work on the field. Today we actually happen to have Bal's twin brother, Lab, who is an expert in space law. He's lecturing all across the world, and thanks for joining us, Lab.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So the cultural focus of space is often centered around engineering, science, and the one general wonder of the stars above. How is it that space law comes into play in an issue like this one?
Sure. Well, actually, space law is quite crucial. It really informs so much of what we do in space. To give you a brief overview, its inception in the 20th century has sort of been based on some of the basic principles, for example, of the law of the high seas. And to boil down some of the central principles and the tenets of space law, you might say that it's to achieve a common purpose, to achieve a peaceful use of space. And what we've seen really over the past year in trying to reconcile this issue with the satellites is just how important it is to have something that binds us all together, and importantly from a legal point of view, to have frameworks in place to guide what we do.
That's intriguing. What are some of the frameworks you just talked about in place for events like this one?
Sure. Well, actually, this specific situation has shown us that we don't actually have a big repository of guidelines and policies and protocols in place. Admittedly, and quite fortunately, over the past 50, 60 years since the end of the Cold War, we've seen that there has been an accretion of law, and there has been an increase in how much we have in place. And this is probably best shown with the Committee of the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, for example, which has really made some headway into binding so many states under a common banner. And in fact, really, that has been one of the most significant changes, is changing the tone of the law, changing the tone of policy from one more Cold War-esque style, which is more divisive between nations, to one that's much more cooperative now and much more peaceful. However, what we've noticed is that there really isn't necessarily specific stuff in place for situations like this.
And what are the steps to follow from a legal point of view?
Sure. So this relative lack is a bit of an unfortunate reality. And what we've seen is that the UN has been meeting quite frequently over the past year to decide what the best path forward might be. Some of the legal discussion has been surrounding whether the protocols and processes we have in place normally can actually be applied to a situation like this. To give you an example, the International Telecommunication Union is the body that normally allocates the frequencies and the bandwidths, but the process of applying for one and receiving one is actually quite long, and it can span months, and it's a bit of a time-consuming and arduous process. And what we see is that we can't really reconcile that sort of previous procedure with an emergent situation such as this one, where we've really been suffering on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. So what's going to be really interesting moving forward is to see whether the stereotypically slow law and policy-making process can actually keep up with not only the advancement of space technologies, but with scenarios such as this one.
Thank you, Lab. No. Thank you very much. That's it for us today. From all of us here at 799 News, thanks for watching.
Wait, we have live feed from the balloon!
So that's it. This conversation has been designed not to scare you, but to simply raise your awareness. Space isn't just stuff of science fiction. It's connected through our daily lives, our people, our things. We are all intrinsically connected through the assets that we've placed in space. The way we communicate with each other, the images of our floating heroes that inspire us, our ability to reach our destination, and a capacity to know whether we will need sun cream or a raincoat when we arrive. None of these would be possible without access to space. We know that there are real threats out there which could cut us off from space, leaving us forever tethered to this planet, this pale blue dot. We need to have a plan for if this happens. We need to ensure that it is neither our actions nor inaction that cut us off from this wondrous universe forever. It's up to us.
大家好，现在是在悉尼国际机场，卫星已经失效1年了。现在很多旅客滞留在机场，我们采访一下其中一位旅客。你好，你好，干嘛呀你？这个卫星失效1年了，你有什么感想？
去的大爷！我已经在这儿躺了1年了，别采访我，快走！
我们将继续跟踪报道。
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Very engaging, very brilliant presentation. So we have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. And while we're thinking about it, I just have a quick question for you guys. During reading the report, actually, the main narrative in the report was attributed to losing the assets because of debris or weather phenomena. Have you considered probably different modality, like intentional sabotage, and how would that actually change the balance of powers? Maybe you could elucidate the geopolitics landscape as the result of this new picture.
I can handle that one. So we purposefully excluded any sabotage or military. So we purposefully excluded any military or sabotage consideration of this scenario. Essentially, we didn't want to write somebody a blueprint as to how to destroy space assets. But it's a really interesting question. The purposeful destruction of assets in space is certainly a possibility. We have seen unintentional destruction of assets in space already, and we've seen the damage that that's caused. We know that many of these space assets do have propulsion systems, and the dual possible use of civilian and military aspects that this opens up does provide a wide range of thinking scenarios. But no, we haven't gone into that within the report purposefully. No problem.
Any questions on the
So I have another military question, sorry. Yes, so the military uses space for communications, for intelligence gathering, and with GPS. Why wasn't that like the impact on the military and like how it might affect an ongoing war, like the situation in Iraq and Afghanistan? How would it impact them?
Unless someone else wants to grab this one, I can handle this as well. Again, by restricting it to restricting our considerations to non-military, the possibilities that we could consider with and without space report are huge. We decided to constrain the report early, and we decided to keep the military stuff out primarily because we don't know everything that military satellites can do. If we're trying to consider what the military aspects would look like without it, we would need a deep intelligence into how the military satellites operated and how the data gathered from them is utilised for on-ground decisions. Unfortunately, none of us here have a military background, and few of us do, but those that do shouldn't be sharing that information with the rest of the team.
I thought it was a great presentation. I love the humour. That was really nice. I want to ask the group whether you thought you could think of a situation where we might simulate what you've described. So typically in, say, terrorism situations, we simulate a situation in a city, we lock it down, we go through the process of seeing how communities and agencies react. So do you think we should shut down, say, the telecommunications satellites for 24 hours to see what happens?
Should we? Potentially not. However, there's an interesting situation in an American city. I believe it might have been San Diego, thank you, where there was a military test which essentially jammed GPS signals, or jammed all communication signals from satellites for 3 days. And there was quite a bit of havoc that was caused out of that. So rather than a simulation, we can have a look at what happened within San Diego and take some learnings from that.
Thanks. Yeah, good presentation. That was very entertaining and insightful. Just was wondering with these scenarios, and one of the speakers or the guests to the news program mentioned that the laws and policies might not adapt as quickly as the technology to find solutions to the problems if a scenario like that occurred. And the theme I got was that there needs to be, and from your conclusion that there's an awareness that needs to be made. Was there any consideration of how you can go about setting the awareness in and the education into the community in order to help facilitate if something like this did happen? And I haven't, mind you, I haven't read the paper or the executive summary, so I was just curious.
I think just the answer, sort of like the crux of your question, which I think was towards the end, about how we can actually make this something that we can pass on to people in the community and make them more aware. I think that was actually, when we were going into this project, that was, and in terms of brainstorming about what we wanted it to look like, that was part of it. We wanted it to be something that could be given to people and that something that people could read. We were given the brief that this was meant to be readable by all manner of people, and that really the fundamental point we arrived on was that it should be something that can inform someone about the importance of space and what would happen without it. So this is, I think, probably maybe like a first step towards that, and we haven't really thought about how we might be able to take this further from now, but I think it'd be really interesting to pursue that, and to see if we can take what we've done here as a starting point, as a stepping stone to diversifying the complexity of reports like this, and creating a spectrum of things that we can give to all manner of people and all ages, and I think this is probably like a good starting guideline for that, and that's, I think we've achieved our purpose that we set out on. Yeah.
So in the report, we also investigated other kinds of, like the movie industry. For example, we had an example with the Day After Tomorrow and how the impact of people watching the movie The Day After Tomorrow and the people not watching, their impact on their opinion on climate change. So we could potentially, with such a strong subject like this, go to the movie industry, and it would have a big impact on our society. Thank you.
Thanks. That was a really entertaining presentation, so well done. Can you comment a little bit about the effect of the logistics, particularly with marines and trade, marine logistics and trade? We are like a global economy now, and I'm just wondering what the impacts would be for each country that's reliant, would have to be more reliant on their own, growing their own food and not being able to export or not being able to import as quickly as they would without the systems that we've got now.
Yeah, the marine industry is going to affect more without satellites because they are depending upon the navigation system. They are unable to navigate and they are unable to move. And more thing is that we don't know about the weather in the oceans if we don't have satellites. So it's going to be severe effect what we have seen, and we don't have much numbers, but for imports and exports for the food, all the countries, especially, it's in a very huge impact on that.
Thanks. No, that was fantastic. Really entertaining, but you got the message across. You mentioned that there's not much information out there on how we're going to manage these issues. Are there initiatives that you see out there where the world is trying to work together and looking at these scenarios in more detail and how we may react?
There is some small amounts of information. What we identified is that what has been considered is generally within a particular type of satellites. So this might be considered from the loss of the PNT system rather than the total loss of satellites. Now, of course, it's questionable whether if we have an event, whether we will lose all of the satellites for the consideration of this project. We made that assumption to keep it simple because there are many different rabbit holes we could go down through investigating this issue, and that would be a lot of fun. We chose to, by constraining it around all the satellites going, that allowed us to explore the effects in a lot more detail throughout this report. So yes, to answer your question, it's more particularly around the individual, the telecommunication satellites or the PNT satellites.
Yes, I also have a small comment for this. So as some of you may know, the US have developed a ground-based communication system called ELORAN. So they are prepared, but it's not deployed yet, this system. Another thing is Google and I think Facebook are coming up with new ideas about balloon launches with supplying of internet to third world countries and so on. So they are looking into other ways of having our communication system and PNT not in space. So this is.
I can elaborate a little bit more on the ideas they've got for alternative communications, because in 2016, Vint and Cerf gave a bit of a chat at a public lecture, and one of those projects is Project Loon, which is a balloon-based internet system, and basically they'll send multiple stratospheric balloons up to make a grid-based network. Hasn't been a lot of progress on that recently, as far as I'm aware, but this was based on the preliminary research and some reading that based off that lecture. And I believe Boeing is looking at using large airships to do those kind of services as well. I hope that elaborates a bit more.
For those who've had the pleasure or otherwise of seeing the film Gravity, it may be an entertaining film, but the science was rubbish. And so what I'm using that for is, and in particular, the science about the debris and the whole process of orbiting debris was really could be challenged. So do you think your report will be challenged because you're not specific in any way about the coronal mass ejections or about the debris situation? Debris is not likely to cover all the orbits that we talk about. Now, I know you've been deliberately vague on that, but do you think you'd be criticised for it?
Quite potentially, and it might be a valid criticism, but one thing that the movie Gravity and this report will have in common is about raising awareness. So whilst with the movie Gravity the science might be rubbish, it has raised the awareness the global awareness that space debris could be an issue. The report does the same sort of thing. The message we're trying to send through this report is that without access to satellites, we have a heavy reliance on satellites. It's probably more than most lay people understand. We're trying to communicate what some of the scenarios will look like without satellites so that a lay person can read any part of this report and go, oh, hang on, this affects me, or this is how it could affect me. This is how satellites, this is how space affects our daily lives. So from that perspective, yes, there's opportunity for a report to be criticised, but if we raise the awareness, then hopefully that gets somebody thinking and we can pursue this and get some action out of it, some action being some more future-proofing.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. So we'll take a 25-minute break. We'll convene here at 10:30. Thank you.
I'll be disappearing shortly, so
Yeah.
see you perhaps sometime.
What do you mean? Oh, you're leaving? That's it?
I'm leaving shortly.
Leaving the program? Oh.
Oh, no, leaving here, not leaving very soon. I was going home. So,
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming.
enjoy NASA.
Yeah.
In case you don't know what it stands for.
I'll try to remember what it stands for.
I'll send you a quick report.
Yeah.
Actually,
Can you hear me? I can't. Am I being projected?
camera. All right. Thank you all. Please take a seat. As the judge, I now declare the case of the Economic South and humanity open. Today, the court has gathered to decide the fate of the defendant, humanity. To my left, humanity has been accused by the plaintiff, the Economic South to my right, of failing to adequately support the development of the southern states in the new Space 2.0 era. The remedy the Economic South is seeking is an increased focus on their interest in the Space 2030 agenda. To determine the future of humanity, the court aims to identify and recommend priority items to be included in the Space 2030 agenda from the perspective of the Economic South, which advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So the jury audience, so you're aware, Space 2030 is to be an agenda under the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, established in June of 2018, with the goal of using space as a driver for peace and the Sustainable Development Goals. Before I open the floor for appearances, I'd like to preface saying this is a fictitious court and is by no means accurate, but it's my first day on the job. My mum is very proud of me. We'll see where this goes. With that out of the way, counsel, appearances, if you would.
Thank you, Your Honour. May it please the court, my name is Eamon Lawson and I appear on behalf of the plaintiff, the Economic South, in this matter. Thank you.
May it please the court, my name is Rube Goldberg and I appear on behalf of the humanity, the defendant in this matter.
Thank you for your introductions. Counsel for the plaintiff, you have the floor.
For far too long, humanity has treated my client, the Economic South, as a second-class global citizen, ignoring my client's socioeconomic needs and instead favouring to develop only a handful of privileged nations and support only their interests in space.
To be in space is a privilege.
That's a privilege.
Order in the court.
Thank you. As I was saying, to assist the court in identifying methods through which to promote the sustained development of all southern states, I will call upon 4 witnesses to provide expert testimony. Each witness embodies a pillar of knowledge that will be vital to an effective Space 2030 agenda. Your Honour, with your permission, I would begin calling my first witness.
Permission granted.
Jason, could you please rise and state your name and affiliation for the court?
My name is Jason, and I represent the space economic pillar.
Thank you, Jason. And could you please assist the court by explaining exactly what is meant by space economy?
The space economy is mainly about how we can make money from space and how we can use space technology to stimulate the economy on Earth.
And so you mentioned making that money in space, bringing it back down to Earth. How can that actually benefit civilians here on the planet?
I think at least 2 ways. One is we can use the space systems of facilities, to open up new industries on Earth. And the other is we can convert the space technology to civilian industries and to stimulate the economic growth.
Perhaps to assist the jury in a better understanding, you could provide maybe an example of this?
The research and the design of the space systems of facilities have given the business on Earth great advancement in such as microelectronics technology, new material technology, for example, new composite technology, new composite material technology, and also the precision manufacture technology. And in terms of conversion of the space technology to civilian use, I can give the court an example. In China, more than 2,000 space technologies have been converted into civilian industries. And this greatly promote the economic growth. And also, and also, this is just the an example for China alone, and there are many other conversion of space technology in all over the world, especially in the economic north. Application of aerospace technology has driven the development of civil industries, such as batteries, photovoltaics, high-quality automotive parts, and also professional flexible fabrication lines, which helps transform the traditional batch manufacturing single production mode into a small batch intelligent production mode, especially easily customizing production to the needs of different clients.
If I may interject for a moment, Jason, clean energy is one of the key topics for the Space 2030 agenda. Could you please explain how space may assist in developing that area?
This is just what I was going to talk about. Because of the advancement in the technologies such as microelectronics I just mentioned before, the emerging small satellite market is an area that could potentially promote huge advancement in economic growth. Small satellites, nowadays, with high performances but at lower cost, are very likely to brought new development opportunities and especially brought opportunities of employment for the economic south countries. They could be used to provide, such as broadband communications across the southern continents, especially telecommunication and internet coverage for the remote area that has not been provided service now. And also the small satellites, we can build a constellation and we can get the data we need, to fund the clean energy resource, to find the prospecting sites where we should build a solar power station and where we should build a wind energy site and where we can find the, the geothermal clean energy and where we can find the tidal clean energy, such as. And also, the space technology can even be used to produce clean energy by itself.
Wow, well, I think the evidence really speaks for itself on this point. Thank you, Jason. That ends my questions. Your Honor?
Yeah, we're off to a strong start by the Economic South. Defense, the witness is yours. Have a crack. Jason, should the Economic South shouldn't they concentrate on addressing problems on Earth, like those identified in the Sustainable Development Goal, rather than trying to break into the space market?
In my expert opinion, an increase research and education on space technology can lead to the creation of more highly skilled jobs. This, combined with capacity building, is important for developing countries. This could create more decent jobs and economic growth, which is an important sustainable development goal. So I think for the economic countries, it's a very important opportunity to promote and stimulate their economy through entering the space and through being involved into space activities. It's very important.
And how would governments in the Economic South possibly justify the immense spending
of governments in the space sector?
Well, as I have mentioned before, for example, the small satellite market, it can be entered with lower cost. It's especially accessible for small and medium companies because it costs less money. We can use the technology from small satellites to increase coverage through creating a constellation of small satellites. And we can use the small satellite technology and use the small satellite constellation to get the data we want and we need to understand better how to fix the problem on Earth. And also we can, to solve the problems more efficiently.
No more questions, Your Honour.
Thank you, witness. You may sit down now. Counsel, please call your next witness.
Thank you. I will now call my second witness, Valentina. All benefits of space-related activities and how best to use technologies and space-based services to improve the quality of life on Earth. Valentina, please rise and state your name and affiliation for the court.
My name is Valentina, and I represent the Space Society pillar.
Thank you. And what priorities can the Space Society pillar identify for this agenda?
Well, I would like to focus your attention on some very basic human rights. I mean, eating, having a house, and feeling safe. This should be guaranteed to everyone and everywhere. But the point is that in the economic south, it's not like this. Many people don't have these privileges. They are still poor and they're starving. And we need to take action. And space technology could really help in this. I'm thinking to Earth observation, I'm thinking to global navigation satellite system. They could be, for example, used to predict natural disaster and help in the disaster management. Because, more than 60% of natural disasters still happen in the economic south states. And they are always poorer and poorer because this aggravates the situation. We really need to act.
Wow, that is just awful. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about the consequences of these natural disasters.
Of course, I think we are all very aware of the fact that there are a lot of environmental damages. But what really worries me and what should worry you is that we are losing human lives, people. I have bring here some data, and I can tell you that I have some data from the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. And they reported in the last 20 years, only last 20 years, more than 1.3 million of people lost their life. And it's not over. We have more than 4 billion. They either lost their homes.
4 billion?
Yes, 4 billion.
4 million?
Yes, 4 billions. They lost their homes, they were injured, found themselves in very difficult situation. That's why we need help. And of course, this reflects also on the economic losses. We have an increase of 150% just in the last 20 years.
Wow, that is just awful news. Personally, open and shut case. Your Honour?
Whoa. I make the calls here. So if I have this right, food is good. Disasters equal bad. Did you get that down? Excellent. Okay.
4 billion in that?
4
billion.
With a B.
4 gazillion. Thank you. Defence, the witness is yours.
Thank you, Your Honour. Earth observation data is often shared between states during times of natural disaster, is it not?
No, you're totally right. They are shared, of course. But after the disaster occurs, usually this is the case. Don't you think it's too late? I mean, we already know that some areas on the Earth are at high risk, and we should be provided with these images in order to monitor this area and be able to predict the natural disaster.
Many of the states do not even know what to do with these images, though.
That's not the problem. I mean, in this case, other than the analysis, should be provided too, and maybe also scientific training for the people to be sure that they are independent in future.
How are we supposed to analyze all of this data so quickly?
Oh, you know, we have huge help from machine learning algorithms. I just brought here some new studies from the Department of Engineering Science and from the Oxford University, and they found that machine learning solutions are capable of processing large quantities of data from satellite images. And this would also accelerate the code. And moreover, this processing time could be used directly on the satellites. This would shorten the time of processing directly on board.
Even if this could be implemented, it seems like it would require a lot of advanced technology.
Well, yes and no, in the sense that we just need to have access to timely, accurate, with high resolution satellite images before the disaster occurs. We need to have these to predict the natural disaster and to reduce the damages. But again, they have to be freely accessible at all times.
Yes, but how can this possibly reduce world hunger?
Well, again, as I said at the beginning, the southern states also need to increase their food production. And again, a huge help can come from the global navigation satellite system, because their use with the Earth observation can also improve the food production. Do you know the precision agriculture? Thanks to this, and we can increase the food production up to 10% and reduce the water waste.
But isn't GNSS only for navigation, positioning, and timing?
Well, no, it's not only for position, time, and navigation. Actually, it can be used to analyze the surface of our Earth. It can be used to analyze the wind speed, to know the sea height. And again, to know something more about the parameters of our atmosphere. And in precision, regarding the precision agriculture, the idea is that, so I will give you an explanation how it works. The GNSS satellite just usually use the L-band radio frequency to hit the surface. But the point is that apart from the light that comes back to the satellite, there is another frequency that comes back reflected depending on the shape of the surface that is hit. And in this way, we can know more about the properties of the land. For example, we can know the soil moisture. And this gives us the quantity of water that is contained in the soil and can increase and have a better prediction for the food production and the water waste.
Thank you. No more questions, Your Honour. Your Honour. Thank you, witness. You can sit down now. Counsel?
Absolutely. There's no way to win. We may as well get drinks now. One second. Yep. Oh, jeez. I will now call my third witness, the very French Pierre, to discuss improving access to space for all and ensuring that all states can benefit from space science and technology applications. My friend, please rise and state your name and pillar for the court.
My name is Pierre, and I represent the Space Accessibility Pillar.
And space accessibility is probably one of the more important topics covered here. What does your pillar bring to the table?
Well, my pillar brings the following to the table. We have divided it to three areas of priorities: the space assets, the ground assets, and the data. And I would like to start with the space assets. States in the economic south are looking for international cooperation on space projects. I think that's obvious. But do you know that in the economic south, only China, Iran, and India are having launching capabilities? And do you know that there are only 31 states in the economic south having space assets?
You mentioned only 3 nations with launch capability. Surely there is some example of international cooperation in that scene?
Yes, there are some examples, like QB50 It's, as far as I remember, let me check, yes, 36 CubeSats from all over the world. So it's an international collaboration project, and they aim to launch that together. But still, too often, extra room is left unused either on launchers or on satellites. And I would like to add that there are idle times on satellites, which are also left unused instead of being offered to other states.
No, we really can't be wasting that valuable resource. Well, that covers the space segment. What about here on Earth?
Yes, with the increase of the satellite communications, because we have more and more satellites, there is logically an increase in ground communication infrastructure, of an increase of need. And many states in the economic north are actually already planning and working on developing global networks.
Oh, well, that's fantastic news. That will really help. What about nations in the economic south, though? What about those countries?
Well, around half of these regions of these countries in the economic south are actually located in dry and semi-arid regions. And the location is actually a major natural advantage for satellite communication. Look, for example, at the new optical links. And it seems to me logical that those regions should be involved, should be part of the development of global network, and even create their own, actually.
Really just goes without saying, doesn't it? And you had 3 points, didn't you? Something about data policies. Perhaps you could explain a bit more about that.
Thanks for reminding me. And to be more precise, commercial data policies. We actually, with those policies, we deprive states in the economic south from accessing to space data. And too often, the absence of space program in those regions, in those countries, means it's linked to the absence of access to service based on space data as well. So this all reinforces the divide between the economic north and the south.
Right, well, I think the evidence really speaks for itself. Your Honor? No more questions.
Good. Defense? The witness is yours.
Is it only reasonable to assume that people of the economic south receive similar educations to people of the economic north?
Which education? Are you meaning space education? Are you really that? Do you want to calm me down? I will seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Your Honor.
You're going to have to calm down.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
But do go on.
Yes. In the field of space, there is a huge lack of education. Universities are missing teachers. Teachers do not have access to proper training. And students from remote areas cannot even receive this education. And last but not least, young women struggle to receive education in science, engineering, and technology. And with all the world's highly trained engineers, researchers, professors working, the situation in the economic south is unacceptable.
How can we reach all of these people in such remote areas of the world?
With the current technology, we can communicate perfectly and more or less for free between continents. There is no longer any excuse for remote areas to not having access to quality education. Space technology is here to transmit this space education to the current and the future generations. And the world cannot afford to keep women, half of this population, away from space education.
Is space education really a priority in the economic south, though?
Well, education, and to be more specific, space education, that's what we are talking about, should be accessible to everyone and everywhere. This is the key to ensuring that the states in the economic south continue to prosper through access to space. And because providing products like processed data from space to states in the economic south is, and I definitely don't deny it, it's definitely a great help. But developed nations can offer better help. They can help the economic south help themselves.
Thank you. No more questions, Your Honour.
Thank you, witness. You can sit down now. And thank you for being so dramatic, but please just cap it next time. Yeah. Thanks, Frenchman.
Again, sorry, Your Honour.
That's all right. No need to stand up. It's fine to stay down. Thank you, witness. Counsel, could you please call your next witness?
I will now call my fourth and final, thankfully, witness, Conrad, to discuss the fostering of partnerships and the strengthening of international cooperation for the peaceful uses of outer space. Conrad, if you would, please rise and state your name and affiliation.
Thank you, Counsel. My name is Conrad, and I represent the Space Diplomacy Pillar.
So space diplomacy is a big topic. What are you going to be talking to our jury about today?
Well, the Space Diplomacy Pillar would like to bring to your attention the issue of equitable access to orbit spectrum resources. The space industry benefits the economic south in many ways by providing telecommunications connectivity to remote areas, by developing a knowledge-based economy, by giving employment opportunities to highly skilled professionals. To do this, the economic south needs orbit spectrum resources.
Yes, that all sounds very good. What's the problem then?
Well, dear Counsel, I have it right here that there are 4,200 satellite networks filings to the International Telecommunications Union. And these come from 94 states, 45 of which are from the economic south. And the economic south basically is responsible for 30% of these 4,200 filings. That doesn't sound too bad, does it? But China, India, the United Arab Emirates, these account for almost half of the economic south's share.
Wow, so the rest of the nations only make up about 15% of the overall spectrum.
Yes, indeed.
Wow, that's just awful. I hope you agree. Yeah. So, please continue.
Yes. So safeguards must be put in place for equitable access to outer space for states which have not yet or have minimally put in their satellite network filing requirements. The non-geostationary orbit segment in particular, it's undergoing a massive accelerated growth due to the interest in the new mega constellations. And currently, there is no equitable access mechanism here, unlike the geostationary orbit segment.
No, but that's truly tragic news. But what can humanity actually do about that?
Yes, states of the economic south, they should collaborate to champion their rights to access orbit spectrum resources with a common voice, as each state has a vote at the World Radio Communication Conference without discrimination.
I think you put it better than I could. The path is clear. Your Honour, no more questions.
Yes, thank you. Good points made there. Defence, the witness is yours.
Surely humanity has spent a lot of time on mitigation policies for space debris. Surely you think my client has done enough in that regard?
No, Counsel, you're wrong. And don't call me Shirley. Of course, there is international discussion on debris mitigation today, but this is only half the battle. Over the last 50 years, humanity has been launching rockets into space, and the accumulated orbital debris has become so serious that it can jeopardize missions and create serious damage to space assets. Slowing down the rate of buildup will do nothing as long as the existing debris is already in space and not removed.
So, what is humanity supposed to do about that?
Well, as it stands, before states can remove any defunct satellites or pieces of debris, they have to jump through many legal and political hoops. So based on the current international regulations, objects launched into space still belong to the states that launched them, regardless of their status, whether they are still functional, non-operational, or pieces of debris. And even once they have become broken up into smaller pieces, the states removing these objects still need the permission of the original states to do so. This can be an issue, especially if they cannot identify which states those came from.
I'm not hearing a solution here.
Well, Council, ultimately, unless the international system that recognizes the distinction between space assets and these tiny pieces of space debris is agreed upon, states will just continue to be inactive in the space debris removal scene. And that can only be a bad thing for our orbital situation because, well, who knows, in 60 years' time, will we still have space for the developing nations in the economic south to use?
No more questions, Your Honour.
I think I've heard enough. Are there any more witnesses?
No more witnesses, Your Honour.
Really? No more?
No.
Okay.
No. That's it.
I've never gotten this far before. Oh my God, it's so exciting. Okay. I will now take closing statements from the council. I believe the defendant would like to go first.
I hope that the evidence here today has painted a vivid picture about what the future of humanity entails. Humanity must do what is best for ourselves, reach for the sky, and not look back at the ground below us, as we have always done without change for thousands of years.
Thank you, Sir Goldberg. Plaintiff, counsel?
Jury, judge, audience. I trust that from listening to our expert witnesses, you have gained a better understanding of my client's position. The Economic South has been handed the short straw on innumerable occasions, and it is time for this to end. The space divide is growing, and it is important humanity takes to heart the recommendations that I trust you, the jury, will find the time to make. Because in the end, space belongs to everyone, not just a privileged few. Thank you. The plaintiff rests their case.
Okay. The jury will now consider the evidence and make their decision. Should we pass it on? Oh no, bring it back. Yeah. Do you guys want it as well? Oh, you scrunched them. Okay, all right. The recommendations state, for the economy, to encourage the formation of a small satellite market in states of the economic south. Society, to develop a mechanism for global collaboration among public and private Earth observation stakeholders, and to also use machine learning capabilities to analyse satellite images and provide early warning systems for natural disasters. Accessibility, dramatic Frenchman. Build a path towards launch vehicle sharing and satellite idle time reuse that allow states in the economic south to access space assets. Also to establish ground stations in the economic south and create cooperative networks with satellite operators in the economic north, encourage a discussion at the UN level on data sharing between states and on how to make space data more readily available and free. Regarding education, to extend capacity building efforts for the economic south in the area of space education, increase global cooperation on the issue of satellite access for remote education and teacher training. Furthermore, to ensure states in the economic south to receive training and data analysis so they can better utilize Earth observation data, and to initiate programs to promote STEM education for girls in developing states. Lastly, diplomacy. To secure equitable launch, orbital and spectrum access for developing space nations, and to create an international system for active space debris removal to ensure a sustainable space environment for the future. Are you satisfied? Thank you all. Case closed.
That's it. All right, so we have, actually we have like 20 minutes for questions and answers if anybody want to ask a question. Yeah? Any questions? Yeah, well, I'll start with a quick one then, in that case. We get maybe previous examples from the economic north, how developing countries or emerging countries have looked into capitalizing and using the economies into a catalyst to produce actually space economies and converging what's going on in different sectors, tailoring it to produce actually be part of the big economic global space. Have you looked into some examples and see how you can leverage and capitalize on these kind of things? Jason?
I think we have looked into some examples. For example, in Australia, in South Australia, the government has supported some program like space incubators. The aim is to to provide the chance for small or medium company and to provide them a chance to realize their innovative ideas. And the incubator has attracted many small companies. They have started their small satellite business. And also in China, now the space commercial market is growing very fast. Also many small companies, they have got the funding from the investment circle or from some government investment. Also, the small satellite market requires a rapidly growth of the launch market. Not just the government-supported launch companies. The launch service market all over the world. This is a very good chance for all the economic source countries, to be involved in space activities. And I think this is important for the economic countries, to catch up with the economic north countries and to put their economic rapidly, I think. Thank you.
So for Earth observation, so there's good international cooperation in the satellites. It's a global precipitation mission. So most of the countries adapted, most of the countries has participated in that. In 2030 or beyond that, you found the type of missions are going to come? And one more question is, 2030, you have any research, how many Earth observations will be enhanced or to meet the global climate change, to monitor the climate change for next 50 years?
Yeah.
Thank you, all of you. I think space 2030 is a very topic. Make country a world problem because their economic is very low. Their education is very low. And the women and children not a chance to study and visit the space. So if we from the space look at the Earth is a very little ball, is a small ball. I think the Earth and the human is a family, is a Earth village. So I call on the advanced countries to help economic countries. You help economic countries is equal. Help yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Peace.
Your Honour, my question is to the jury. Jury, in your recommendations, no, let me to put this another way, none of your recommendations address the current issue that humanity has in duplication. We have 6 GNSS systems. Do we need all of those? We have maybe 50 high-resolution, medium to high-resolution Earth observation satellites providing much the same thing. So is this duplication an issue that your recommendations should address?
Okay.
If you don't mind, I will reply to that question. Well, I think this is about data, a lot about data sharing. There are lots of initiatives in data, so we for example, for these different systems, GEOS from the Group of Earth Observation, or the International Disaster Charter, and many others, gathering all the data. And I believe that the variety of all those different missions, I mean, they all differ in a way or another. The GPS is different from Galileo, which is also different from Beidou. So we can learn a lot and grow from that. That's why I get one of the reasons why we didn't make any recommendations on that topic.
Michael?
I'm interested in why it was decided the plaintiff to sue humanity. Why was humanity chosen as the object of your legal case? And I also note that even though the judge was very inexperienced, he didn't invite the defendant to give any evidence. And so I'd be very interested to hear from humanity as to what they say about this claim that has been made against humanity.
All right, Max.
Yeah, so to address the first question, humanity was put on trial because we did not want to blame any specific kind of person or nation. So we think as a group that humanity is responsible for helping the economic South, but the economic South also needs to help themselves. And to address the second question, yes, the defendant was not asked to give any evidence, but it was a fictitious court, so we're not trying to argue against ourselves. So, yeah.
Thank you. I have a quick question, maybe. In the last decade, perhaps one of the most influential things in spurring the new space economy was miniaturization of technologies. Now, for example, any person can start up a small company in CubeSats, and that's probably 15, 20 years ago, that's almost impossible. You need to have very heavy players with hundreds of millions. So have you thought about maybe the next wave of technology, like advanced quantum computers, for example, advanced laser systems, inspiring the next generation of space economies, and how that plays into the global south being a major player?
So in the presentation, Valentina mentioned that we would use something like AI, which is just sort of in the early stages, to help analyze data. So I think a lot of data analytics will be used to, like new technologies like that will help the space economy to progress.
Thank you.
Sir, one more example which Jason was mentioned about the CubeSat technology. Though the economic south countries doesn't have end-to-end capabilities for launch and making the satellites, they can all get involved in making CubeSats and nanosatellites. Even last Unispace conference also insisted that those countries who have launch capabilities should teach the other countries how to make nanosatellites, and that can be launched commercially with other launch vehicles. So CubeSats and nanosats, they can utilize to the maximum to have the benefit for their country, mostly economic south.
Thanks, Meghala. Peter.
Thanks for your very interesting approach to presenting the information. I thought it was good. The Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 vision were basically, I think that started in 2015. We're a third of the way through, and I'm just wondering, in your research, are people actually trying to monitor and look at the KPIs? Are we actually moving forward with this agenda? Has it been effective? I guess that hopefully you've done a bit of research and identified those issues too.
Who wants to answer?
I think what we've mainly focused on is the Space 2030 agenda for the United Nations. So we took the UN Sustainability Agenda as a basis and looked more into the activities that can be discussed in the discussion about 2030 on UN level. So we haven't looked in detail into the indicators and whether or not they help in achieving the sustainability agenda, because that wasn't the main focus of our research, I would say. I think by just doing research on the SDGs, we found out, of course, that space indeed technologies and applications help to advance the SDGs. But that wasn't the main focus of our project.
Sir, we indeed looked at the sustainable development goals pertaining to all the 4 pillars, and we have seen that with respect to 2020 agenda, a lot has been achieved already. For example, in the case of disaster warning, and then how to analyze the maps. So economic north and countries who have capabilities are already helping the economic south countries. But now we ask full, free and open data with Copernicus we are getting. And whenever there is a disaster, even NOAA, EUMETSAT, JAXA, everybody is sharing their data. But what now we ask is one step ahead, like teach us how to analyze the data. Capacity building and training us towards data analysis so that we will become self-sufficient. That's what economic south wants now. So already it is there, full, free and open data, but we are asking now and one step ahead in the 2030 agenda, training and capacity building.
Thank you for that very thought-provoking series of presentations. It's really nice to hear people thinking at a very high level with a national sort of and global viewpoint. However, I'd like to ask a question that is very much closer to home, that this country that is your host has just created a national space agency. And I see here you have 17 recommendations, which probably are the sort of things that our National Space Agency ought to be considering, what would be your advice to them about where they should start? 17 recommendations are too many. Where should priorities lie for a country like Australia?
All right, who wants to answer this? Okay, start with here, and then we'll go to Frank.
If we're thinking about the future and the future generations, whether they're from the economic north or not, we definitely need a basis in education, and there is a Sustainability Development Goal number 4 to do with education, and Target 4C suggests that teachers from developed countries assist teachers from less developed countries trained in expertise of education and passing on their knowledge to teach, and in this case, on space education.
Thanks. Frank, want to add something to it as well?
As our papers say, our reports say we have some logic in every pillar. For example, in our accessible pillar, we have the 5 levels from the knowledge sharing to the technology transfer to the data sharing to the ground station and to the space assets. I think most of the South economic country can begin with the first level to the knowledge sharing and the data sharing, and such as Australia can begin with the data sharing and the ground station.
I think also our report notes that there is a whole new economy which with the new space economy as opposed to old space. So the fact that Australia comes in now with a space agency gives us the opportunity to not be held back by the influence of old space, in that we can go straight into the new space environment and take advantage of those new opportunities. And also I think for Australia it is really important to recognise that we are in the Asia Pacific region, and that we are part of this neighbourhood, and that we will all get much further through sharing and working together collaboratively.
I have heard about the main objectives of Australian Space Agency. That is very impressive. And what now I will suggest is, as far as economy is concerned, I think Australia is much better. And now they want accessibility also. So I would suggest Australia should go for society, to improving the society, and then data sharing with other countries because of its unique position. I could see that even Copernicus program, Australia has requested for this month flood to provide data, and Sentinel has provided the flood map, what we call it as data products, and they helped, Copernicus actually helped Australia to locate the origin and then the spread of the flood also. So already Australia is getting enough help from economic north and other developing countries. Now I would suggest they will focus on the R&D activities in the country and improve their presence in space.
Thank you, Meghala. We have time maybe for one more question, one last question, if anybody has one. Scott?
Thanks for the presentation. The recommendations and the theme that I was understanding from the presentation was that the economic north, because of its history, it has a lot of facilities and therefore access to space already, in contrast to the economic south. And your recommendations all are very appealing for the economic south. I'm wondering, in monitoring how those recommendations, going beyond being recommendations and seeing them eventuated, how would you incentivise the economic north to appreciate those recommendations and follow them?
Thank you. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding where people So what's really important here is not to think that the economic south is a victim or needs the help of the economic north. It needs, we need to collaborate, all of us, to benefit. So it's not, one mustn't see these benefits just helping the economic north. It helps all of us as humanity if we can like the economic north has a lot of advantages to offer. I mean, the economic south has a lot of advantages to offer, a lot of talent, and it's the same with in terms of what Pierre spoke about, bringing women in, and that kind of idea that, you know, bringing women onto boards and stuff. When you have true diversity, boards that, like, of companies that have women on board actually have a higher economic return, like they work better. So, everybody will benefit from this. It's not a case of benefiting the economic south solely. If we all work together better, as we will all see the global benefits for sure, economic and social, across all of these pillars.
Sorry, excuse me. There are three levels we mentioned in the report. One, first level is from the economic south. We mentioned that the economic south must feed back to the economic north. For example, the ground station of the economic south is all over the world, and they can access to the satellite of the economic north. That's the first level. Second level, we should do some decision on the UN level. Maybe we can feed back to the economic north some orbit position or frequency resources, more longer time, or for example. And the last level, we must create a new benefit. If we just share the traditional benefit, there was no motion for the economic north. We must consent to the economic source to create a new benefit and share it and to benefit from to the every country.
Sir, you might have noticed throughout our report, we never said like we are blaming economic north for anything. What we want is only inclusion in the space sector. That's why while reviewing all the sustainable development goals, we focused on how we can improve with respect to Space 2030 agenda. And then we clearly indicated that space for the future, space for all. That's what we want.
Thank you very much, all the team. Let's give them a big round of applause. So this was actually your last assignment for the course. So from now on, it's just going to be relaxing, attending things and graduation, but this one was the last one. So let's give both groups one round of applause again, please. Congratulations, everyone. Okay, so next in the program, I would like to ask all the participants to remain seated, please. All our guests to step outside for drinking teas. The expert reviewers will meet again the same place to discuss the feedback for this one. And then Professor Pardo will be coming here for a review. At 12:30, all of you guys will meet with your prospective team members at the TPs, and you will receive the official feedback from all the reviewers for you. And then at 1 o'clock, there will be a barbecue for everybody here at the courtyard. Thank you very much, everyone.